What is going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be reviewing two new foot plates that I have not previously reviewed on this channel, one of which is going to be on for pre-order. That is the Vector Athletics one. I'll get into that coming up here in a second. But then also give you guys kind of a rundown what I think are the most popular options for resistance band foot plates. I did a video on this a while back, maybe over a year ago. Time for an update. I think these are some of these are brand new, some of these have been around for a while, but again, I think these are probably the most popular options when people are considering using some sort of foot plate with resistance bands. If you guys are not caught up to speed on why you'd use a foot plate, that's a common question I get. Generally, one is just kind of personal preference and comfort. It just kind of feels better standing on a foot plate, doing a variety of exercises. I kind of stand by that simply. The other reason is kind of practically, if you're going to be doing things like heavy, really anything with legs, honestly, but also like deadlift, squatting, lunging, especially with heavier loads and heavier weights, that's when you guys really want a foot plate. And that's when you get into kind of like durability of foot plates, because some of these things are more on the inexpensive, cheap side. Of course, you can rig things as well, but the problem is they can potentially snap, break, and they just can't hold the weight of, let's say, a super thick band. So jumping into it, not gonna waste any time here. Timestamps are down below, links are down below in the description box. Really helps support me in the channel if you guys check those out. Many of these foot plates I actually did purchase myself. Some of these very generously were sent to me free for review, so always appreciative of that. Wasting no time, the first thing we're gonna jump into is one that is pretty popular and one that was out of stock a lot. And this is one I think was really a godsend for a lot of people looking for an affordable, decently built foot plate. That is this GEKU Board foot plate. I just noticed here one of the little sticky things just fell off. That's something, you'll see the unboxing, they put you to work here because they give you this grip tape, you gotta put this on. They give you these little sticky things, which at least mine are coming right off with the adhesive. I literally just put this on. So you take that for what it will, just kind of pull these off right now. Otherwise, aesthetically, the foot plate looks really good. It's got this nice GEKU branding here. The grip tape looks nice. When you pull it out of the box, it essentially looks like a cutting board. Honestly, you couldn't really tell much of the difference, but then underneath you guys can see the various channels where the resistance bands go into. It is a decently sized foot plate. It's not too big, not too small. People like this a lot, one, of course, because of the price. Now, this doesn't seem like it's cheap. It's still 90-something dollars, but for bamboo, something that has free shipping, of course, it's kind of machined a little bit. This was one of the best options that you could find. I don't think one of the only options you could find on Amazon, believe it or not, other than a basic stepper, which I will talk about that one here in a second. I think this thing is great. The only thing I noticed with it, I haven't really got a whole lot of chance to play around with it, but it does like to kind of, well, actually it's not, it was like kind of wobbling a little bit, at least when I had those little things on there. Otherwise, I think it's totally fine. The only minor gripe that I've heard from people, and I said this in a recent review when I did the Rip by Rosenblatt footplate, which I'll get into, is that the edges, when they're wood, people are saying that this can prematurely kind of scrape and wear the bands. It seems smooth enough to me, but the argument was, and I heard this from Mac, who made my homemade wood footplate, was that if you start kind of machining wood, there's a lot more potential of just some kind of sharp edges and things like that. I don't know, kind of depends. This footplate does go in and out of stock. It seems like a lot, or at least maybe they didn't fill the stock for a while, so I jumped on it when it came back into stock to do a review for you guys. But still up there in price, but really the big thing is for the, I think for the wood and also the weight, probably just the cost of just manufacturing. I think that's why the price tag is so high. So that is the GEKU board, very cool. Of course, they make the GEKU bar, which I've reviewed that in the channel. If you guys are curious, I'll drop that down below in the description box as well. The next thing, which is pretty new and also somewhat exclusive, I don't think anyone else has reviewed this yet, is the much anticipated base plate put out there by Vector Athletics. My man Max over there graciously hooked me up with this. Now I gotta preface that this is, he had a scratch and dent series and he was asking me, should I wait for the finished version, which is up for pre-order literally today at the time of this recording. Kind of timed it that way, honestly. Pretty affordable, a dropped in price compared to the initial pre-run of these or initial pre-order. And I said, just give me what you got now, because we don't know when the next shipment's gonna be fully in stock. I think it's coming soon, the final version. I think it looks close enough. I'll give you guys some of the updated features on the new base plate. These were actually for sale, the scratch and dent ones. I think he sold out of these. The overall aesthetics and the functional shape, I think, is gonna be there. But pretty much what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flash some of the pictures on the screen. You'll see this one up close, but I wanna highlight what Max said is new about the current version of the footplate that is up for pre-order. So the biggest thing is the one I have is 1.2 inches thick, made out of UHMW plastic, and I'm not too familiar with plastics, guys, but I learned a lot over the years about why you need such heavy duty plastic. It's kind of expensive. This is almost like cutting board type plastic. and it is actually up there in price. One of the hacks people have said is like buy this cutting board on Amazon and put hockey pucks in the bottom. When you actually do all that work, not to mention it just takes your own little labor to put it together, it still kind of goes up there in price of like almost close to like $100. So I'm just kind of putting that out there that, you know, even though people say you can make DIY these things, it actually can kind of go up in price a little bit. The new version will be roughly 1 inch thick HDPE plastic, and that is to save weight and costs. Also says it provides a better finish. There's going to be no channels, just kind of cut out grooves to reduce the machining costs while still keeping the bands into position. There'll be rubber feet without channels, makes adding or removing bands and having multiple bands under the platform a little bit easier. The cutouts allow for bands to be attached to the corners of the foot plate. That's kind of subtle, but you can kind of see it on his pictures here. And I think he's also said he's going to be updating some of the pictures in the near future. The other big thing to me is that this is going to be very competitively priced, making this not only a budget-friendly option, but also a good quality option. So I think that's actually pretty huge. So he's saying it's going to be $139.99 for pre-order on top of the promo code, which again I'll flash on the screen, shameless plug, help support me in the channel. So that's honestly kind of a hard deal to kind of beat, so maybe I'll mention that towards the end wrap up. And then just finally, I do want to add, he does have a new thing up for pre-order, which is pretty good. A lot of you guys use things where you're laying on your back on a foot plate, doing things like bench pressing and stuff like that. So he has this new base pad. I'm sure I will review that and cover that in a future video. But even in this older version, this is still pretty lightweight, and I would say the dimensions are pretty dead on. You're going to see a bunch of kind of comparisons to various dimensions. To me, you guys know, and maybe I'll just jump to this here in a second, I do like X3 for one of the reasons is I just like kind of a tight dimension, only because for how I personally use these things, I only use them for a few key exercises. And I just think for me, for my dimensions, I'm 6 foot. You can say what you will with it, maybe just because I'm used to it. I just like stuff kind of closer together, especially when I'm doing things like bicep curls. The bands are just coming kind of falling straight down the foot plate. It also just makes it easier for travels. So whenever I am grabbing something, it's not that I'm trying to shill for X3. It's just, this tends to be the foot plate that I jump to most often. I did make a whole video how yes, you can kind of cut your bands, but it also said with a variety of foot plates, if there's enough friction, you can cut really prematurely wear any band and any foot plate. So I think that's just something you got to be mindful of. I've been using this foot plate a lot, and I don't really notice a whole much of a difference other than the first week I used it when I was having more friction. So I think honestly it's personally fine for most people, but definitely not perfect. And then moving on, this is in no particular order. This is the Harambe Footplate, another great high quality plastic foot plate, but one that people who are not familiar with this category might look at this first glance and really roll your eyes at, because this thing is not cheap. This camo version cost me, and I did pay for this, $300. Harambe did give me a discount code, but they don't have any exclusive sales for better or for worse, so you can save 10% on this or anything. Very solid foot plate. Is one of the first of its kind to kind of come along after the X3 foot plate down here, which I kind of covered up here. And one of the biggest things this had going for it was it had a wider width, it had some extra channels. Still a great aesthetically looking foot plate. Also has these kind of cutting grooves here to allow a little more of the bands to kind of fall a little bit closer in. Also, the way these things are machined, it's very smooth. I can't see these things hurting the bands. Of course, if you do go on Harambe, they do have a pre-order right now, I believe, for their cyber plate, which let me know if you guys want me to cover that. I don't know, it's a lot of money for me to drop $500 on a foot plate. In my opinion, it might be a little overkill if you guys are really into it. That's definitely up to you. There's rollers on it, to protect the life of the bands. But I think, as I say, all these things, you're going to get decent life out of the bands to the point where eventually you're going to replace the bands anyways, just for elasticity purposes. I'll just leave it at that, but that is definitely probably up there. Is going to be one of the deluxe foot plate that's going to be coming out. I'm going to jump right here to the cheapest option, and that is a basic step platform. This one, there are two platforms. The first one I actually used was a cheaper one by like $4. It was a little bit shorter in dimensions. I'll flash that here in the screen. I think this one's actually the better option. This is like the traditional dimensions of a basic stepper platform. These are made in the USA for what they're worth. Very light, relatively cheap plastic. They do the job. But what I like about this one, again, it's a little bit more money. It's a tiny bit longer, but this one actually has a built-in channel here versus the other one I covered did not have a built-in channel. I think it had a middle channel here. And so you're always kind of standing on top of the bands. I just didn't like that. I feel like that was just kind of prematurely wearing the bands. If you're looking for the most budget-friendly option just to get yourself going out of the door, and of course you can get it on Amazon, this is probably the king, but I'd look for this side channel in this particular version that has it. The downside with this is that you're higher off the ground, so you already get kind of more of a pre-stretch. It is a little bit longer, in the grand scheme of things. It's one of the longest of all the foot plates. Not as long as the Rip by Rosenblatt one, which I recently covered, and I'll get to it. But it's going to add some extra stretch to your bands. And the other thing is, I asked this to a number of people manufacturing, why don't you just make a very cheap foot plate like this out of plastic and make it easy for people. One, I'm sure the margins aren't that good, but two, this is very cheap plastic. So if you're under heavy loads, which I don't know how many people are actually gonna be using like the big elephant bands, but if you are gonna use heavy bands, basically it might not stand up. Also the plastic, maybe a little bit more on the abrasive side, but this is kind of overkill. If you're just getting going, only using it once in a while, these honestly would probably suffice for most people. All right, moving on to a product that I don't cover enough that is probably up there as one of the best ones. I call it the beast here, and that is the Clench Footplate. Very popular. You don't see me using it a lot just because it is this kind of big and just because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, but this is probably one of the ones that is one of the most versatile in the ways you can kind of put the bands to various loops. It was one of the first that had multiple channels, and that was very cool. Of course, one of the biggest, it reminds me of some sort of serving platform where if you were having a dinner party, you can serve some, some cheese and bread on here, but digress, it's probably made of the same material. You have different options down here with the kind of the screw in, the little knobs at the bottom, so how far you want it off the ground. Even without these, you can use it as is. So just a lot of options. This thing is up there in price at $279. Of course, there's also a promo code with me, shameless plug, you can discounts on this. This, I think, is one of Clench Fitness's biggest sellers, if I'm not mistaken. And so I would say this is another one if you're really into resistance bands, you don't mind a wider platform or you want a wider platform. The Clench Footplate is probably still the king in that category. Honestly, don't say it enough. Brandon from Clench Fitness, awesome company, awesome brand. I don't talk about them enough. They are great people over there. And then going down the line here, I'm only mentioning this as a DIY option. Of course, my neighbor does make these. I keep saying this, I don't think we're gonna do these forever. We'll probably do one more. This is probably maybe the final run, right? If you're interested in just a homemade, USA-made foot plate, you guys can do this yourself. This is just a basic wood board. I say basic, but this takes him like 4 hours to make. So you guys can make your own and make it look nice and lacquer it up. But I think it's smooth enough. If you wanna make your own DIY platform, go to a local wood shop, give them the dimensions. You're probably gonna pay for it, honestly. This one right here, like I say, it's made in the USA. And I use this one a lot just because I know who made it. I have like kind of an emotional attachment to it, to the person who made it. I just like the basic dimensions. These are the dimensions I actually told them to make it. It's versatile enough where it's just a simple square. You can go channels all over the place. I like how it's relatively low to the ground, and I use this for a variety of things, not just this. And I'm actually sitting on his calf raise block, which are actually very cool. I don't sell these enough or talk about them enough, but that's actually something else he's made for me as well, kind of custom made. Then finally, because we just covered this, we have the Rip by Rosenblatt one, which I said was an affordable option, but now there's some other players in play. You guys might reconsider this. Jason's over at Rip by Rosenblatt, or Squat Harness, made this one, which goes for $179, kind of mid-grade territory. It is bamboo, which is a sturdy wood. Same wood material that is made out of the GEKU board. This, I'd say, is a thinner wood. Sometimes you do see a little bit of a bend if you're on one end, but it's not gonna break any, you're never gonna break, I don't think, something like this. Very basic, simple channels down here. Very basic kind of setup what you can do. The unique things about this is probably one of the most widest boards we have to kind of go along with his squat harness. You also have these hooks on top where you can anchor bands on top to do a variety of things, kind of super steady between exercises, but also a very good, decent foot plate in its own right. So with all that said here, guys, what are my recommendations for what foot plate should you choose? Now, some of this comes down to, of course, your budget, your needs, your interests. Some people just like picking up multiple foot plates for multiple reasons, because I know a lot of you guys are really into it. Personally, I think I just like a smaller, very simplistic foot plate. So I like just simplistic designs, so that's why I tend to use my MacBoard a lot. I even like Jason's for its simplistic design. Of course, you cannot beat what Max has just done with this very cheap and affordable but high density solid foot plate. It's right in that sweet spot of being just big enough but not too big, also not small. Also, new version is going to be thinner and lighter. So it's kind of hard. I think it really comes down to personal preference. What I tell people with all this stuff, guys, is start cheap, see if you're actually going to use it first, and then kind of invest your way up. There's a lot more options out there now than there used to be, believe it or not. Kind of seems like such a simple niche category that's been growing, but I think it'll continue to grow. Obviously with that cyber plate coming up, I would say start with a very basic stepper for like $20-something, $30. If you got the extra money and you know you're probably going to use it, then I would say just go up a tier, maybe the GEKU board, maybe Max is over at Vector Athletics. See if you like it, but at the end of the day, don't spend a whole lot of money on something you know you're not going to use. That's it though, guys. Any questions, comments, definitely feedback, leave your stuff down below in the description box. I'll post it. Of course, any promo codes, links are down below. Greatly helps support me in the channel and keeps these reviews coming. Let me know if you guys want to see that cyber plate review, and I'll give you guys my honest thoughts about that. See you guys on the next video.